The observation deck of the Pathfinder station stretched across 3 levels, a cathedral of transparent aluminum and reinforced crystalline panels designed to withstand the vacuum's unforgiving pressure. Dr. Sarah Chen had spent the last 72 hours without sleep, her eyes fixed on the impossible darkness that consumed the stars one by one. The coffee in her mug had gone cold hours ago, but she continued sipping it mechanically, a habit her exhausted mind clung to for normalcy. Lieutenant Marcus Webb appeared beside her like a ghost, his reflection materializing in the viewport's glass. His uniform hung loose on his frame. He'd lost weight from stress. They all had. The entire scientific team had been operating on adrenaline and dread since the phenomenon first appeared 3 weeks ago, emerging from somewhere beyond the Kepler expanse like a wound opening in reality itself. The accelerations increased again, Marcus said quietly, his voice hoarse from endless briefings and urgent communications. He held a data pad that glowed with crimson warning indicators. 2.3% faster than yesterday's measurements. At this rate. He trailed off, unable to finish the sentence that would confirm their collective nightmare. Sarah turned to face him, and Marcus could see the toll written across her features. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her normally immaculate appearance had deteriorated into something disheveled and haunted. But her gaze remained sharp, analytical, the mind of a scientist refusing to surrender to despair, even as everything screamed that despair was the only rational response. "How long?" she asked, though her tone suggested she'd already calculated the answer multiple times. "Tell me the precise figures, not approximations." Marcus's jaw tightened. 82 days, give or take 6 hours. The variance depends on whether the expansion maintains current acceleration or achieves terminal velocity. Our models suggest it'll continue accelerating for approximately 30 more days, then plateau at its maximum expansion rate. But Dr. Chen, he paused, struggling with the weight of what came next. At that maximum velocity, the horizon will consume the outer settlements first. Kepler 442b mining operations, the Tau Ceti research stations, Epsilon Eridani agricultural colonies, then the inner worlds. The numbers meant billions of lives. Entire civilizations, humanity's hard-won expansion across the stars, generations of sacrifice, innovation, and determination to spread consciousness beyond a single fragile world would be erased in 82 days. Sarah pressed her palm against the viewport, and the glass felt cold, solid, real in a way that the incomprehensible darkness before them decidedly was not. Beyond that transparent barrier lay the horizon, a perfect sphere of absolute void expanding through space, consuming light, consuming matter, consuming everything. Her instruments couldn't explain it. Her experience couldn't contextualize it. Her education had never prepared her for something that violated every known law of physics. "We need to act," she said, her voice gaining strength despite her exhaustion. "We need answers before panic spreads through the colonies. If people understand what's coming, if they truly comprehend the scope of this threat, society will collapse faster than the horizon itself." She turned from the viewport with sudden decisiveness, her scientific paralysis transforming into action. Her fingers flew across the communication console, bypassing normal protocols and routing directly to Earth's central command. The quantum-entangled communication array hummed to life, maintaining instantaneous contact across the vast gulfs of space. "Connect me to the Secretary General," Sarah commanded. "Emergency Priority Alpha, we have a situation that will reshape civilization itself. And Marcus," she glanced back at her colleague, "get every astrophysicist, theoretical physicist, and dimensional mathematician available. We're going to need their expertise because that thing out there, that horizon, isn't natural. Something created it. Something intelligent controls it. And we need to understand what before 82 days expire." The observation deck's alarms began shrieking again. The emergency conference chamber on Earth's orbital platform hummed with barely contained chaos. Holographic displays flickered with data streams, astronomical calculations, and military threat assessments. Faces appeared and disappeared across quantum-linked screens. The Secretary General in Geneva, Admiral Harrison commanding the fleet from Mars Station, Dr. Yuki Tanaka representing the scientific community from Tokyo, and dozens of other officials whose authority suddenly seemed hollow against the enormity of what they faced. Sarah's image transmitted from the Pathfinder station, her exhausted features magnified across the main display. She'd showered and changed into a fresh uniform, a concession to formality that felt absurdly inadequate given the circumstances. Behind her, Marcus Webb and 3 other senior scientists monitored real-time data feeds, updating the Horizon's position every 30 seconds. "Gentleman Dr. Tanaka," the Secretary General began, his voice carefully controlled despite the tremor of fear beneath. "We've reviewed Dr. Chen's transmission. The expansion rate is catastrophic. Our evacuation models suggest we cannot save more than 40% of our population, even with complete mobilization of every transport vessel in existence." Admiral Harrison's response was immediate and forceful. "Then we mobilize completely. Every civilian transport, every cargo ship, every vessel capable of carrying human beings. We establish evacuation zones and implement mandatory relocation protocols. We preserve the species, even if we can't preserve our current civilization." "Where?" Dr. Tanaka's voice cut through Harrison's military certainty. "Where exactly are we evacuating to, Admiral? The Horizon expands in all directions. Our projections suggest it will eventually consume every inhabited system within human space. Running buys time, but time is exactly what we don't have." The argument escalated, voices overlapping in a cacophony of fear and desperation. Some officials advocated for immediate evacuation. Others demanded military response, weapons, shields, defensive measures. A few suggested religious or spiritual intervention, as if prayer could somehow halt the incomprehensible phenomenon. Sarah watched silently, studying the chaos. These were humanity's finest minds, its most powerful leaders, reduced to panic and contradiction. She understood the impulse. Humanity had survived through flight, through fight, through faith. But those survival mechanisms felt pathetically inadequate against something that defied every category of human understanding. "We're asking the wrong question," Sarah said quietly. The room didn't hear her. The arguments continued, growing more heated, more desperate, more futile. "We're asking the wrong question," Sarah's voice cut through the noise like a blade. The holographic displays flickered as she increased transmission power, her image growing larger, more imposing. "Admiral Harrison, Dr. Tanaka, Madam Secretary, we're debating how to run from something we don't understand. That's cowardice disguised as strategy." "What do you propose, Dr. Chen?" the Secretary General asked carefully. "That we surrender." "I propose we investigate," Sarah replied, her exhaustion falling away as scientific purpose reasserted itself. "That horizon out there, it's not random. The expansion pattern follows mathematical precision. The acceleration profile suggests active control. Something intelligent created this phenomenon. Something intelligent is driving it. We need to understand what, why, and how." "That's suicide," Admiral Harrison stated flatly. "Any vessel that approaches that horizon will be destroyed. We've already lost 3 probe drones confirming that hypothesis." "We sent passive probes," Sarah countered. "No advanced shielding, no active countermeasures, no intelligence behind them. What if we sent something with real armor? What if we sent people equipped with cutting-edge technology and the analytical ability to adapt in real time?" Silence flooded the conference chamber. The implication hung between them like a physical object. Someone would have to cross the boundary. Someone would have to venture into the impossible and emerge with answers. "You're volunteering," Dr. Tanaka observed, understanding dawning in her eyes. "Yes," Sarah confirmed. "And I'm requesting authorization to assemble a team of 25 specialists, scientists, engineers, military personnel. We take the Prometheus, humanity's most advanced vessel, and we approach the horizon. We gather data. We attempt communication. We discover what we're facing before 82 days expire." The Secretary General's face aged visibly. "And if you don't return?" "Then humanity will have bought time through our sacrifice," Sarah replied. "But I don't intend to fail." Prometheus hung in Earth's orbital dock like a predatory creature at rest, its hull gleaming with matte black military-grade armor plating that had been forged in the crucible of deep space combat protocols. The ship represented humanity's finest engineering achievement, a fusion of cutting-edge weaponry, advanced shielding technology, and quantum-entangled communication, arrays that maintained instantaneous contact across the vast gulfs of space. Sarah Chen walked through its corridors with Commander James Park, their footsteps echoing against polished steel deck plating. Park moved with the confident precision of a military officer who had piloted vessels through asteroid storms, solar flares, and enemy engagements across 3 sectors. His weathered face showed the scars of command, literal bullet wounds from skirmishes in the outer colonies, psychological weight from decisions that had cost lives. Yet his eyes remained steady, focused, analytical. If anyone could navigate them through the impossible, it would be Park. "Crew assignments are finalized," Park reported as they walked. "Combat specialists from Earth's Defense Forces, astrophysicists from the European Space Agency, engineers from the Martian Manufacturing Collective. Everyone aboard understands the mission parameters. We're not conducting a rescue operation. We're conducting first contact with an unknown phenomenon that may represent either humanity's greatest discovery or its final hour." Sarah studied the crew manifest on the data pad Park provided. 23 names, 23 lives, 23 people who had volunteered knowing they might never return. Among them was Dr. Raymond Foster, the theoretical physicist who had first proposed the existence of higher-dimensional mathematics. Lieutenant Commander Maria Santos, a weapons systems specialist with unprecedented knowledge of adaptive shielding. Dr. James Okonkwo, a biologist and xenobiologist studying potential alien physiology. Each person represented humanity's best, its brightest, its most courageous. "Have they been briefed on the radiation levels we'll encounter?" Sarah asked. "Full disclosure," Park confirmed. "Every crew member has reviewed the preliminary data. The horizon's boundary emits exotic radiation across spectra we've only theoretically predicted. Standard shielding won't be entirely effective. We'll experience elevated background radiation, but not at lethal levels, not immediately anyway. Long-term exposure is unknown. We might develop radiation sickness. We might experience cellular mutation. We might suffer neurological degradation." "They volunteered anyway," Sarah observed, feeling the weight of their sacrifice. "They volunteered because they understand what's at stake," Park replied. "Billions of lives depend on what we discover. Humanity's entire future hinges on whether we can comprehend the horizon before it consumes us. That tends to put personal risk in perspective." They reached the command center, a chamber bristling with holographic displays, navigation controls, weapon systems, and the quantum-entangled communication array that would maintain their connection to Earth. Sarah ran her hand across the central console, feeling the hum of technology that represented humanity's collective determination to survive. "Final systems check," Park announced to his crew as they filtered into the command center. "Navigation." "All vectors plotted," the navigation officer confirmed. "Distance to horizon's edge, 2.4 million kilometers. At maximum safe velocity, we'll intercept the boundary in approximately 6 hours. "Engineering." "All systems optimal," the chief engineer reported. "Shields at full capacity, weapons systems armed and ready, life support functioning perfectly. We're ready to push this vessel to absolute limits if necessary." "Communications." "Quantum array is calibrated and locked," Lisa Torres announced from her station. "Earth receives every transmission in real time. We maintain absolute connectivity regardless of distance or interference." Park nodded with satisfaction. "Then we're go for launch. Dr. Chen, any final preparations from the science team?" Sarah looked across the assembled crew, humanity's finest gathered in this singular vessel, about to embark on a journey that would either save civilization or confirm its doom. "Record everything," she said firmly. "Every instrument reading, every sensor data point, every visual observation. Whatever we encounter out there, humanity will know the truth through our documentation." She moved to the viewport, gazing toward the distant darkness that consumed the stars. Somewhere beyond their current perception lay the impossible, the horizon, expanding relentlessly, drawing closer to humanity's worlds with each passing hour. "Disengage from dock," Park commanded. "Navigation, engage primary drives. We're going to meet whatever waits for us in that darkness." The Prometheus disengaged with a gentle shudder, its massive engines igniting to brilliant blue luminescence. Earth's sun hung behind them like a golden memory of everything they were leaving behind. Ahead waited mystery, danger, and the possible salvation of the human species. The approach to the impossible had begun. The viewscreen displayed the horizon in all its terrible majesty, and Sarah's breath caught in her throat. From a distance, it had appeared as a spherical void, simple, comprehensible, a blank space consuming light and matter indiscriminately. But as the Prometheus approached within 100,000 kilometers, the boundary revealed layers of impossible complexity that violated human perception itself. Reality seemed wounded at the threshold. Space twisted into geometries that hurt to observe directly, dimensions bending and folding in ways that three-dimensional consciousness struggled to process. Sarah's instruments screamed contradictory readings simultaneously, quantum sensors registering impossible states, gravitational detectors measuring gravity wells that existed only in fractional dimensions, radiation counters detecting spectra that shouldn't theoretically exist. "Reduce velocity to 1/10 power," Sarah commanded, her scientific training overriding the instinctive dread that clawed at her mind. "I want incremental data points as we approach. No sudden movements, no aggressive actions. We're observers first, explorers second." Park's hands moved across the navigation console with practiced precision, adjusting their trajectory with minute calculations. The Prometheus slowed from its rapid acceleration to a careful, methodical crawl toward the boundary. Around them, the darkness seemed to pulse with an almost biological rhythm. Something alive, something aware, something waiting. "Launching first reconnaissance probe," announced Dr. Foster from the science station. His voice carried the tremor of a man witnessing something that transcended his mathematical models and theoretical frameworks. "Active sensor suite, spectrographic analysis, gravitational mapping, launching in 3, 2, 1, mark." The probe detached from the Prometheus with a barely perceptible vibration, its metallic frame gleaming as it accelerated toward the horizon's edge. Sarah watched the telemetry stream across her displays, data points accumulating in real time. 90,000 kilometers, the probe transmitted flawlessly. 80,000 kilometers, still transmitting. 70,000 kilometers. Sarah leaned forward, her exhaustion forgotten as scientific fascination overwhelmed her fear. 60,000 kilometers. The data flows intensified, gravitational measurements becoming increasingly chaotic, radiation readings spiking across multiple spectra simultaneously. 50,000 kilometers. And then, silence. Not an error message, not a malfunction indicator, but absolute, complete silence. The probe ceased transmitting not with a final warning or distress signal, but simply ceased existing from any communicative perspective. "The probe is gone," Lisa Torres confirmed quietly. "All telemetry terminated. No debris signature, no radiation signature indicating explosion. It's simply not there anymore." Sarah's mind raced through the implications. Launch the second probe. Different approach vector, active scanning protocol, increased transmission bandwidth. I want every sensor reading amplified and redundantly transmitted back to us. "Launching second probe," Foster announced. 10 seconds to boundary interaction. 30 seconds of data transmission. 40 seconds. 43 seconds. Then silence again. This time, however, Sarah had captured something in those crucial moments. Her instruments had registered patterns within the chaos, structure within the apparent randomness. "There's something in there," she whispered, her eyes fixed on the data cascading across her displays. "It's not random destruction. The probe wasn't randomly annihilated, it was systematically disassembled. The energy signatures suggest controlled deconstruction at the molecular level." Commander Park turned from the navigation console, his military training sharpening his focus. "You're suggesting intelligent control." "More than that," Sarah replied, her voice gaining certainty. "I'm suggesting intentional acquisition. Whatever exists beyond that boundary isn't destroying the probes, it's analyzing them. It's studying humanity's technology." Lisa Torres' voice came through the communications station, tight with barely controlled excitement. "Dr. Chen, I'm detecting residual quantum patterns emanating from the boundary. There, structured, almost linguistic in nature. Repeating sequences, mathematical progressions. It's not random radiation bleed-off." Sarah's heart accelerated. "Is it a transmission?" "I think so," Torres confirmed. "The patterns are too organized to be natural phenomenon. Someone or something is broadcasting intentionally." Park looked toward Sarah, understanding the magnitude of what they'd discovered. "Open a communication channel. Whatever's driving that horizon, it's not mindless. It's trying to communicate." Sarah nodded, her scientific curiosity overriding caution. "Open all communication channels. Transmit a greeting on every conceivable frequency. Audio, visual, mathematical, gravitational wave patterns. If something intelligent exists beyond that boundary, we're going to establish dialogue." The Prometheus accelerated slightly, approaching the horizon at 40,000 kilometers distance. Ahead waited answers or annihilation. Either way, humanity's fate balanced on the razor's edge of this first contact. The transmission began. The quantum array crackled with cascading data that seemed to defy categorization. Prime numbers arranged in perfect sequences, geometric proofs demonstrating mathematical concepts that existed only in theoretical frameworks, fundamental physical constants expressed in notational systems that human mathematics had yet to develop. Sarah watched the data stream across her displays, her exhausted mind struggling to process information that her education had never prepared her to comprehend. Then the images came, symbols that burned themselves into human consciousness, mathematical constructs visualized in ways that made observers simultaneously understand and question their own perception. It was as if the boundary itself was teaching, transmitting knowledge directly into the neural pathways of anyone who attempted to decode it. Dr. Foster's hands trembled as he worked the translation protocols. "It's not encrypted," he whispered, awe and terror mingling in his voice. "The data wants to be understood. It's structured specifically for human comprehension, translated into our mathematical frameworks. Someone out there studied us. Someone knows exactly how our minds process information." "Get me a coherent translation," Sarah commanded, her scientific detachment masking the primal fear coursing through her veins. "Priority on meaning extraction." The translation system compiled for 30 seconds, an eternity in computational time. Then words appeared on the screen, consciousness expressing itself across the boundary that separated dimensions. "We are the boundary, we are the limit, we are the answer to a question your species has not yet asked." Silence flooded the command center. Every crew member read those words simultaneously, each person grappling with the implications. The horizon wasn't an accident. It wasn't a natural phenomenon. It was a constructed entity, sentient, purposeful, and apparently interested in humanity specifically. Sarah's hands moved across the communication console with deliberate precision. "Response protocol, all systems. Open a channel on every frequency we've established. Get me quantum entangled transmission active. I'm going to talk to whatever that is." "Dr. Chen, is that wise?" Park asked, his military training warning against engaging unknown entities directly. "No," Sarah replied with absolute conviction. "But it's necessary. We came to understand. Let's attempt understanding." She pressed her palm against the communication interface, feeling the vibration of quantum arrays resonating beneath her skin. Her voice transmitted simultaneously across light speed, quantum-entangled networks, and gravitational wave patterns. Every communication method humanity possessed converted into a single message. "Who are you? What do you want? Why are you expanding through our space?" The response came instantaneously, not traveling through space at light speed, but arriving as if it had been waiting for the question since time itself began. "We are the horizon. We are what comes after, and we have come because your species has finally learned to listen." Sarah felt her consciousness expand at those words, understanding blooming like some impossible flower. This wasn't invasion. This wasn't conquest. This was something fundamentally different. "Continue dialogue," she instructed Tors. "Ask about purpose, ask about origin, ask about intent toward humanity." The back-and-forth transmission continued, humanity's questions meeting responses that seemed to contain layers of meaning beyond simple linguistic translation. Each answer led to deeper questions. Each response revealed new dimensions of understanding. "Do you destroy what you consume?" Sarah transmitted. "We do not destroy. We translate. We transition. Everything caught within our boundary experiences transformation into states of existence your current physics cannot describe. You consume stars. You consume planets, civilizations. We preserve them. We preserve everything. Higher dimensional states where entropy cannot reach, where time functions differently, where consciousness persists indefinitely." Sarah's breath caught. Higher dimensions. Theoretical physics suggesting that consciousness might transcend three-dimensional limitations. Everything she'd studied, everything humans had theorized about existence beyond conventional space-time, seemed to be confirming itself through this impossible dialogue. "Commander Park," she said slowly, "calculate our position relative to the horizon's expansion front. I need to know how much time we have before the boundary reaches humanity's inner worlds." Park's fingers flew across the navigation console. At current expansion rate, approximately 82 days before outer colonies are consumed, 150 days before inner system exposure, 300 days until Earth itself is threatened. 300 days. Humanity had 300 days to make a choice: flee from the horizon, fight against it, or attempt to understand it. And understanding seemed to be the key that would unlock everything. Sarah looked toward the viewport, watching the impossible darkness pulse with internal luminescence that defied conventional light emission. Somewhere beyond that boundary existed answers. Somewhere beyond lay the truth about existence itself. "Maintain dialogue," she commanded, "and prepare for escalation of contact. Whatever that horizon is, we're about to have a much more intimate conversation." Earth's council chambers descended into controlled chaos when Sarah's transmission arrived with the translated dialogue. The initial scientific wonder rapidly transformed into existential terror as the implications crystallized in every official's consciousness. The horizon wasn't a natural disaster. It was a conscious entity offering transformation. The concept shattered humanity's psychological frameworks and forced a confrontation with questions that religion, philosophy, and science had debated for millennia. "This is impossible," Dr. Yuki Tanaka's voice carried equal parts awe and disbelief. "Higher dimensional translation. We don't have theoretical models for consciousness existing in non-Euclidean space. We don't understand how neural structures could maintain coherence in dimensional states we can't even mathematically describe." "And yet," the Secretary General replied carefully, his voice carrying the weight of a man forced to confront the incomprehensible, "the entity calling itself the boundary has demonstrated knowledge that matches our most advanced theoretical physics. It translated its communication specifically into frameworks our minds could process. It's studying us, learning our cognitive patterns, adapting its message for our comprehension." Admiral Harrison's military perspective cut through academic speculation. "So what's the threat assessment? Is this entity hostile? Should we be preparing defensive measures, weapons, shields?" "The boundary explicitly stated it doesn't destroy." Sarah's transmitted response came through quantum-entangled networks, her exhausted face magnified across every display. "It translates. It transitions consciousness into higher dimensional states. Our weapons might be utterly meaningless against something operating in dimensional frameworks we can barely theorize about." "Can we verify this claim?" Tanaka demanded. "Everything the boundary has communicated could be deception, advanced psychological manipulation disguised as philosophical truth. We can't trust an entity we don't understand." Sarah's pause was pregnant with decision-making weight. Behind her, the Prometheus Command Center hummed with urgent activity as Commander Park and his crew monitored the horizon's continued expansion. The boundary had slowed its acceleration slightly, another impossible development that suggested controlled manipulation of fundamental physical laws. "There's one way to verify," Sarah said finally, her voice carrying absolute resolve. "We go in. Commander Park and I will take a scout vessel through the boundary with active recording equipment. We'll transmit data as long as we maintain communication capability. We'll experience the transition directly and report on whether it constitutes destruction or transformation." "That's suicide," Martinez protested violently from the council chambers. "You'll be annihilated the moment you cross that boundary. We'll lose you, and we'll have gained nothing except another data point confirming that the horizon destroys whatever enters it." "Or," Sarah replied calmly, "we'll cross and discover that transformation isn't annihilation. That consciousness survives the transition, that the boundary was telling the truth about preserving rather than destroying." The Secretary General's face aged visibly. "Dr. Chen, you understand what you're proposing. You're volunteering to potentially cease existing in any configuration that would allow communication back to us." "I understand completely," Sarah confirmed. "But consider the alternative. We run for 300 days watching the boundary consume human space, knowing that we could have investigated, could have discovered whether transformation offers salvation instead of doom. That's unacceptable. Humanity doesn't survive by running blindly. We survive by understanding." Park's voice came through the quantum network, steady and unwavering. "I'm piloting the scout vessel personally. If anyone's going through that boundary, it's going to be someone with combat experience and the ability to adapt in real time to impossible circumstances. Dr. Chen handles the scientific documentation. I handle survival." The crew is volunteering to remain aboard the Prometheus and maintain observation protocols, Sarah added. They'll record everything we transmit before, during, and after the transition. Earth will have complete documentation of what happens when human consciousness crosses the dimensional boundary. The council chamber fell silent. The decision had been made. Two people would venture into the impossible, carrying humanity's hopes and fears, prepared to sacrifice themselves for understanding. "Prepare your vessel," the Secretary-General said finally, his voice hollow with the weight of dispatching two of humanity's finest toward probable annihilation. "And Dr. Chen, Commander Park, if you survive this transition, if consciousness persists beyond the boundary, know that you carry humanity's future with you. Come back to us transformed or come back not at all, but come back with answers." The quantum connection terminated. Aboard the Prometheus, Sarah and Park began preparing the scout vessel, humanity's final attempt to understand the horizon before 82 days expired and the outer colonies disappeared forever. The approach to the impossible had become a journey into transcendence. The scout vessel detached from the Prometheus with a gentle vibration that reverberated through Sarah's skeletal structure. She felt every atom of her body responding to the separation, as if consciousness itself was somehow anchored to the larger ship and reluctantly releasing its grip. Commander Park's hands moved across the piloting controls with mechanical precision, his military training suppressing any emotional response to what they were about to attempt. "All systems green," Park reported, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what loomed ahead. "Navigation locked on approach vector. Distance to boundary, 20,000 kilometers, velocity holding at 3/4 speed." Sarah watched the horizon grow larger in the viewport, and her perception of it transformed with proximity. The boundary wasn't a simple void anymore, it was architecture. Vast, incomprehensible geometries existed within the darkness, mathematical structures expressed in dimensions that human visual cortex couldn't fully process. Her brain interpreted what her eyes perceived, converting impossible geometry into something approaching comprehension. "Beginning sensor sweep," she announced to the Prometheus monitoring stations. "Recording all telemetry in real-time transmission. Whatever happens in the next 30 minutes will be documented completely." The first sensation of crossing the threshold was subtle, a gentle pressure against consciousness, as if something ancient and vast was gently acknowledging their arrival. Sarah felt her neural patterns responding, synapses firing in configurations that shouldn't be physiologically possible. Her consciousness didn't diminish, it expanded. Colors bloomed in her awareness that didn't exist in three-dimensional space. Blues that contained additional spectra beyond human perception. Reds that carried dimensions of meaning impossible to express in conventional language. Greens that seemed to stretch into mathematical infinities. Sarah's mind struggled to process sensory input that violated fundamental laws of human neurology. "Can you feel it?" Park's voice came through their communication system, but it also came through her perception directly, as if his consciousness was brushing against hers across the dimensional boundary. "Sarah, I'm becoming something else." "We're not being destroyed," Sarah gasped, understanding crystallizing with absolute clarity. "We're being translated, expanded. Our consciousness is being converted into higher dimensional states. We're not dying, we're evolving." Her body remained intact. She could still perceive her physical form, but that form was becoming something more. She could feel neural pathways that shouldn't exist, consciousness extending into dimensional spaces that three-dimensional brains weren't supposed to access. Her memories remained, but they were now accessible with perfect clarity. Every experience she'd ever had, every moment of her existence, existed simultaneously in her awareness. Park's consciousness surrounded hers, still recognizably him, still maintaining his essential identity, but vastly expanded. His military training had prepared him for adaptation to extreme circumstances, and even this transcendent transformation couldn't destroy the core of who he was. "The stars," Park transmitted, wonder saturating every aspect of his expanded consciousness. "I can feel the stars, Sarah, not with my eyes, with something else entirely, something that exists beyond visual perception. I can feel the atomic structure of distant stellar objects. I can perceive the quantum states of matter light years away." Sarah's instruments continued recording, bandwidth straining under the weight of data they were transmitting backward through the dimensional boundary. Her scientific training reasserted itself even as transcendence overwhelmed her perception. Data, Documentation. Evidence that consciousness survived the transition. We are alive, she realized with crystalline certainty, more alive than we've ever been. The horizon's vast intelligence surrounded them, not threatening, not consuming, but welcoming. Sarah perceived vast structures beyond the boundary, geometries expressing consciousness in forms that transcended individual identity. Billions of minds existed in this dimensional state, all of them translated from their original physical forms, all of them preserved in this higher dimensional existence where entropy couldn't reach. The universe is dying, Park transmitted, understanding flooding through him from the collective consciousness surrounding them. Three-dimensional existence operates under entropy, disorder increasing, heat dissipating, everything moving inevitably toward thermodynamic death. But here, in this dimensional state, entropy has no meaning. Time functions differently. Consciousness persists indefinitely. Sarah's consciousness expanded further, perception encompassing not just nearby space, but distant cosmic structures. She could feel humanity's worlds, still existing in three-dimensional space, still moving inexorably toward the horizon's approach. She could feel the fear radiating from billions of minds contemplating their potential annihilation. But she could also feel something else, hope, because now she understood, the boundary wasn't destroying civilization. It was saving them from an inevitable cosmic death. It was offering transcendence to all consciousness willing to accept transformation. We need to transmit the truth, she said to Park, their consciousness now intertwined across dimensional boundaries. Humanity needs to know what we've discovered. They need to understand that translation isn't annihilation. The transmission began, Sarah and Park's consciousness expressing itself across the dimensional threshold, carrying the message that would reshape human civilization forever. The transmission crackled through quantum-entangled networks, Sarah's voice transformed yet unmistakably her own, resonating with dimensions of meaning that three-dimensional consciousness struggled to fully comprehend. The Prometheus crew recorded every word, every harmonic frequency, every mathematical undertone encoded within the message that would determine humanity's future. To humanity, her voice began, carrying weight that pressed against the minds of everyone listening across human space. We have crossed the threshold. We are translated. We are transformed. And we understand now what the boundary truly represents. The Secretary General sat frozen in Earth's council chambers, tears streaming down his face as he listened to a woman he'd authorized for probable sacrifice speaking from beyond the dimensional veil. The universe as you know it is dying, Sarah continued, her consciousness expressing truths that transcended conventional linguistic boundaries. Not through the horizon, despite it. The fundamental constants governing three-dimensional existence are degrading imperceptibly but inexorably. Reality's expansion accelerates, entropy increases, every star will eventually exhaust its fuel, every planet will cool. Every consciousness operating within three-dimensional spacetime will eventually fade into cosmic silence. Dr. Tanaka's hands trembled as she processed the implications. Sarah was describing not invasion but salvation, not conquest but preservation. The boundary does not destroy, Sarah's transmission continued. It translates. It converts consciousness into dimensional states where entropy has no meaning, where time operates according to fundamentally different principles, where individual consciousness can persist indefinitely without degradation or decay. Everything caught within the horizon, every star, every planet, every conscious being, is preserved in a higher dimensional existence where death itself becomes impossible. Commander Park's consciousness wove through the transmission, his military perspective adding weight and credibility to the revelation. We have experienced this transition firsthand. We remain ourselves, our memories persist, our identities remain intact, but we now perceive existence in ways that three-dimensional consciousness cannot access. We exist simultaneously in states of being that would be incomprehensible to our former selves. This is not an invasion, Sarah emphasized, her consciousness reaching across the dimensional boundary with desperate intensity. This is a rescue operation orchestrated across time scales that dwarf human civilization. The boundary has been expanding through the cosmos for millions of years, collecting consciousness, preserving civilizations, translating species into higher dimensional existence before their original dimensions succumb to entropy. The implications rippled through human consciousness like shockwaves. Humanity was not unique. Humanity was not first. Billions of civilizations had already been translated, their consciousness preserved in dimensional spaces beyond conventional perception. But we do not force translation. Park's consciousness interjected, addressing the fear that had seized every human hearing this revelation. The boundary respects the autonomy of consciousness. Choice remains sacred. Those who wish to remain in three-dimensional space may do so, but understand that eventually, when entropy claims this universe completely, when stars exhaust their fuel and galaxies disperse into infinite darkness, those who remained will fade. Those who accept translation will persist, Sarah added. We will have transcended the limitations that bind three-dimensional consciousness. We will have evolved beyond the thermodynamic constraints that make death inevitable. We will have become something that entropy cannot touch. The transmission paused, Sarah and Park's collective consciousness reaching across the dimensional boundary with profound understanding. The horizon moves closer not as threat, but as opportunity. It approaches because consciousness within your space has called to it, whether consciously or not. Every scientist contemplating higher dimensions, every philosopher questioning existence, every spiritual seeker reaching toward transcendence. These are signals transmitted across dimensional boundaries, invitations that the boundary recognizes and answers. Humanity need not fear. Park's voice resonated with absolute certainty. Humanity need only decide. Do you wish to remain in three-dimensional space and accept eventual thermodynamic death? Or do you wish to evolve, to translate, to become something more? Both choices are valid. Both will be honored. Both will be preserved in whatever form existence takes. We chose translation, Sarah concluded, her consciousness expressing the profound peace that came with acceptance of transcendence. We chose evolution. We chose to become infinite, and we persist here beyond the dimensional threshold, transformed but never lost. We will watch as humanity makes its choice. We will welcome those who wish to join us, and we will respect those who choose to remain. The horizon will continue its expansion, Park added. It will offer its gift to every consciousness it encounters. Some will accept. Some will refuse. Both responses are equally valid. The universe's greatest gift is not the promise of transcendence. It is the freedom to accept or reject that promise. The transmission intensified, Sarah and Park's consciousness expressing something beyond words. Pure meaning, understanding, compassion radiating across the dimensional boundary like light from a newly kindled star. We are alive, their consciousness resonated together. More alive than three-dimensional existence permits, and we invite humanity to discover whether transformation might offer not annihilation, but salvation. The transmission ended. Across human space, civilizations faced their greatest choice. Some prepared to accept translation, to cross the boundary and join Sarah and Park in higher dimensional existence. Others chose to remain, to live their lives in three-dimensional space, accepting the inevitable entropy that would eventually claim them. The horizon continued its expansion, not as destroyer but as guardian, offering salvation to all consciousness willing to accept transformation. And somewhere beyond the dimensional threshold, Dr. Sarah